Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and with me today is Shor Denny of Community Now, a leading SEL nonprofit out of the Moreno Valley area of the Inland Empire. And this is 3 C's of SEL: communication, community, and collaboration. Today we're going to talk about whose lives matter. Sure, whose lives really matter?
I'm not sure, and I truthfully don't think anyone's do. I don't think any lives matter right now.
Wow. I mean, that says a lot because we have people who say Black lives matter. We have others that say all lives matter. And you're taking a contradictory approach that, well, does anybody's life really matters?
Because it doesn't. It really doesn't. And I think that we see that every day. Even though they want to say Black Lives Matter, and I believe Black Lives Matter, and then there's some group that says all lives matter, and I think all lives matter, but I think through all of this, what our communities and what society is showing us is that no life matters. Many people are not wearing masks, so they don't care about life. They don't care about theirs, and they don't care about others, right? No matter if you're Black, green, brown, or purple, no life matters if we are not taking seriously how we can protect ourselves and protect others in this time of epidemic, of disease. We are in a time of disease. I'm not saying don't go out, stay quarantined, because we know that's not going to work with our society, but we can be responsible and be responsible for the life of others. So Black Lives Matter, protests were going on, and many were wearing masks, but there were those who did not. Those MAGA protests, the counter protests are going on, and none of them are wearing masks, right? No life, even though they want to say all life, no life matters. No life right now, except mine, is what everybody is saying. Me individually. Everybody else can die. All that matters is what I want to do in my life.
I think you bring up a great point. I mean, you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears. And if I'm protesting about the value of life, however we're defining it, Black lives, all lives, my life, her life, if that's what we're saying, yet I'm not taking proper healthcare precautions in the middle of a 100-year pandemic, I'm literally revealing who I really am. No, I don't believe lives matter. I'm just arguing here because I believe I'm better than you. And I'm not talking about just the privileged class. I mean, we have to deal with that as well. But as soon as I start engaging people believing that I choose to believe it's a hoax, or it won't affect me, or it only affects them, fill in the blank who them may be, now all of a sudden we're invalidating their lives. You're susceptible to it, Shor. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm better than you, but I think we all matter.
Exactly.
There's so many contradictions in that. Go ahead.
And how do we make sense of that? How do we live with that without being angry and everyone, going to their own corners, right? How do we say that all lives matter? How do we make that so that it's the point, so that everyone has a chance? I mean, I don't know if there's anything such as equality right now. I don't believe that we can start from here and say that we're equal, right? We've had hundreds and hundreds of years of not being equal socially and economically in this society, in this America. And
with regards to the equality issue of what exactly constitutes equality, so we can say whether it's been achieved or not. But I want to back off of the equality challenge just for a moment and get back to the fundamentals of what Community Now really focuses on, and that's the community and our youth. Sure, what example are we making for our youth as adults when we're out in public, being engaged, protesting, shopping, or just observing, and we're not wearing masks? We're not demonstrating that we're taking proper protections and value for life as we understand it. What's the example for the children?
well, I'm gonna think that the example is telling them that they're better than anyone else and that they don't have to follow rules, right? And that they're not only better, but they're superhuman because they're not going to get sick or bring it back. So not only better, but above human, is what I think they're trying to tell them. That's what I'm seeing when I see people out in a community without a mask. Knowing that we have just been re-shuttered, right? I mean, we're not in quarantine now, but we've gone back a phase. I think we're back at phase 1 of opening, where we in California had kind of tried to move through. But it only makes sense for us to be where we are and being re-shuttered because respect didn't happen. People did not believe that the mask needed to be. And the kids that went out, right? Summer happened. July 4th, I think, is when everybody was allowed to come back, right before July 4th, so that they could make that money, right? So when this youth started hitting the streets and we started being able to be out there, they immediately did what youths do, not even being concerned with the fact of what their mother or father said, perhaps. You know, maybe they walked out the house with a mask, and when they got with their friends, they took it off. Maybe, you know, some families are worried and saying, wear a mask, and our kids are still going out and some of them are wearing a mask. I'm kind of throwing all these scenarios out to say that they're confused. We don't know, they don't know. They're out there trying to be as normal as they can be with all of these confusing and conflicting information and advice and you know, information that they're getting from their parents, and they are simply confused.
You know, so what we end up having are choices being made by people for their own individual benefit that are not taking the community benefit into account. And again, the whole idea of community now is that we're trying to communicate that as a community, we need to be better. We need to deal with trauma better. We need to be able to emotionally heal better so that our community is stronger. So the battle comes back to you, Shor, in your organization, is how do you communicate, again, to the youth particularly, that they need to have a sense of ownership for their well-being, because the example may not be obvious, but at the end of the day, their lives matter, and they have to be prepared to accept the responsibility as well as the language. What would you tell a group of elementary school age or middle school age kids who are actually making decisions, and you hope they're good ones? What would you tell a group of middle school aged children with regards to the responsibility that they have for being healthy?
Well, we start with giving them, teaching them the value of self. So it would be working on those life skills. You know, we'd be working on self-esteem. We'd be looking at, you know, their self-image, goal achievement, all types of things to make them feel good and powerful. And then we can tell them about, you know, show them that there is a chance that they could die, right? We can talk about not only them being good and powerful, but that they have family at home that is susceptible, that are at risk, and what are they doing to protect those that are around them? You know, they could think that going over to a friend's house or on a certain street is okay, but if they might catch something without wearing a mask over there that they could bring back. I think the responsibility is a heavy one, and it's something that we do need to teach our kids, that they do have a responsibility in this world. Right now, when we're trying to teach them how to manage time, right? They're being homeschooled. Now they're learning all kinds of new skills that they are going to be using, and all beneficial, that they're going to be using later in life. And another one of those is the value of life and the value of their life. And again, it's by using the trauma-informed approach of showing them why it's good for them, right? Why wearing a mask is healthy for them themselves, so that they will be mindful of why to wear it, and wearing it more often. When even their friends say, oh, look at you, you have on it, you know, they're like, yeah, I got on a mask and you should have on one too, right? And having them maybe be the peer, you know, the example, and guiding other youth.
I think one of the things that has been an unintended consequence or an unintended result of not just, well, of the mask and what it represents is the fact that there are fatalities that are involved with the pandemic. I mean, that is self-evident. But the fact that we're not having funerals, the fact that we're not having life affirming services, and the other euphemisms that we use, we don't congregate either in a place of worship or a place of serenity where we're able to acknowledge the passing, however you choose to perceive it. But we've removed that part of the ceremony, that part of closure. And I think for our youth, they understand that yes, they pass, but there's no closure. And without closure, you end up perverting your understanding of the events that led to that. And I think that's a big part of our inability to grasp the mask and say, I got to own this, if, even if it's not for me, but for the good of my family. Do you think, are you seeing similar things to that effect as you interact with young people, even in the environment you're in now?
Oh, yes. And even with adults, it's not real. What's happening right now does not seem real. The numbers do not seem real. We only to people that are personally impacted by the death of someone through COVID. And those numbers are getting higher, right? We're at like 100, 300, I don't know, 3 million in the world or something. The numbers are so huge and horrifying that, sometimes I have to take breaks and days to even get that information. I don't even want to know right now what the number is because it just rises so quickly. We need to, I was watching the news last night and they're bringing out the refrigerated trucks again, right? In Texas. So we're having so many deaths that our mortuaries are over full and they are housing bodies in refrigerated containers. But nobody sees it. You hear a blurb on the news and then it's gone. But mentally stop and process what was just said.
Right. It gets difficult. I mean, from the human mind perspective, there's not closure, there's not imagery. Joseph Stalin, and we can argue politics, but Joseph Stalin during World War II said something which was very insightful. And he said that 1,000 deaths is a catastrophe. 1,000,000 deaths is just a statistic. At some point, we become numb to the totality of the human destruction. So what I'd like to do is again, sort of pick at your brain a little bit. How do we communicate to our youth, particularly in this case, our urban youth, the value of a life when they're seeing it just being held so casually as this pandemic takes heed in their community? How do we communicate that to them?
I really don't know. Once you are exhausted with the value of life, once you've used every tactic to help them understand value and every tactic to get them to understand the value of others, then I think that's all that we can do other than be the example, right? And I think that is what is missing now is the example. There are so many contradictions and so many individual ways of adhering to the general rule that I think that is where we as society are failing our youth, is in not being clear, not having it's going to happen this way and this is this is what everyone is going to do. So I think that once you say and they understand value of life, there's nothing else other than our example.
I want to take that and maybe just stretch it just a tad, if I may, because I think the example is very important, but I think the next step to that is leadership. What's being communicated by our leaders, whether they're local leaders, statewide leaders, national leaders, international leaders?
We could just close the show right now and just say, screw it then. Because the value, the benefit of our leaders at this point is why we are where we are with this conflict and all of these contradictions. It comes from our leadership. So if we're going to include our current leadership, then we know why we are the only country that is having such an outbreak, right? We know why where our passports are being, refused. We're not allowed to almost leave our country because we're so polluted at this point because of our leadership. So I don't know if we can put leadership into it. Again, I think we have to leave it at the parent level at this point, because states government, our governors are trying to help us with our health. Some are not. As far as leadership and systematic, if you're, policies or guidelines, that's not existent.
Well, I have to, again, I want to challenge you. I'm just challenging you all over the place today.
Good.
Because when we're talking about leadership, I'm not talking about specifically elected officials or people with fancy titles. I'm talking about people with influence, people who can actually move a community, move a group of other individuals toward positive outcomes. And I think we see pockets of positive outcomes. New York, actually, the state of New York has been a great example of being someone who was early attacked by the COVID virus. And through their leadership, where they were able to curtail it so that it is less aggressive now. As a matter of fact, it's one of the areas that's less aggressive nationally, where others like California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, have taken the lead with regards to being very aggressive in not fighting it, but being susceptible to the impact of the virus. Louisiana, which isn't even a very large state by population, is having a tremendously difficult time with managing it from a human resource perspective. And I recall at the beginning of the pandemic, they were very over the top with their disregard for it. But I think the reality is now set in that state. So when I use the word leadership, I'm thinking about those who are worthy of following, not those who are worthy of being voted in.
No, but I'm going to have to say no, because I think Newsom did a fantastic job. I think he has been exemplary in his leadership. I think our mayor of LA has done a fantastic job in leadership. I think it's down to the individual, the parent, that thinks that no life matters, that has got us in this position. I think that our youth are not looking at our governor. Our youth are not looking at, they are looking at the president. I think that that is some scope that our youth are seeing. But I think that, again, it's our example as adults, as they're walking around in their own neighborhood and they're seeing the adults and the kids and what we're doing. That is what their example is, and we are their leaders, and they are going to follow our lead. If the governor says don't wear a mask, and your parents or the people around you in the area around you are wearing masks, you're more likely as a child to wear a mask. So I think that we as adults, we as parents, and we being around, going into our local stores, what we are doing to continue life as we know it post-COVID, that we have a responsibility because our youth are looking at us. And when we are walking around and we see those youth without masks, the age group that is supposed to wear masks, I believe 8 and above, anything under 8, I believe they don't have to wear a mask. But anyone else, we should be like, wow, why don't you have on a mask? I mean, really, maybe we should be the little mask police. We've got, contact tracers around here trying to figure out how people got the disease. Maybe we need someone going around saying, do you have your mask? Did you, maybe the mask seller should be at the front of the stores, so that they're selling masks before you go in. Another thing is our stores are not being consistent with the mask either. Some stores, they let you in even if you don't have a mask. So again, it's our example as adults and in our local communities, how we are addressing the mass that is going to impact our youth.
I think you bring a very balanced approach and set of insights to this. So I'm going to take that and ask you to narrow it just a bit as we bring this into a close. What is the one piece of advice? What would be your one encouragement at the community level? And I'm talking parents, I'm talking teachers, talking employers. What is that one message you would want them to give to the people who follow them? A leader is someone who has followers. What is the one message, parents, community leaders, employers, that you would have them giving to the young people that they have following them?
I would talk to the leaders and I would tell them to pay attention to their youth, to answer the youth's questions and to bring them into the conversation and to become a part of it and not to talk at them or to direct at them. So the first thing would be to make them a part of it, right? Have them become responsible and understand the value of the conversation and their part in what is going on. Would be what I would tell our leaders. I would tell our leaders, number one, that we're in a time of community trauma. Everyone is affected. We need to start being mindful of mindfulness. Teach ourselves and our youth to breathe, to remember that things can be much more than we are able to handle at one time, and to say that's okay. To understand that right now you might not be sleeping well. You might have some confusion. There you may have a challenge in concentrating. There are all kinds of things that are happening to all of us right now. And I would say that we need to pay attention to our bodies and stop reacting to everything that is going on, but to pay attention and to use our mindfulness so that we can stay in the moment in peace and in calm, instead of going into the frenzies that we tend to get ourselves into, even in these conversations that you and I have. So to the leaders, I'm going to say, maintain your mental wellness and to teach our children how to do the same. And that will save a lot, that will show the value of life, because when we can start breathing and thinking, we can start remembering that we're human and we can start seeing the humanity in others. That's what I would say.
And I think we have to wrap it up on that very important and powerful point. At the community level, our leaders, we have to reinforce mental wellness. We can use other words, but mental wellness is what is going to create better decision making by each individual, whether it's masks, whether it's social distancing, whether it's just communicating that this is an issue. As a young person communicating, this is an issue that I see with the way we're conducting our day-to-day lives. I'm having trouble learning virtually. Someone help me. I understand the importance of time with someone. I have to value that. But that whole idea of mental wellness, I think, brings us to a very strong close, as we want to know whose lives matter. All of us. But mental wellness is what's going to unite us toward moving forward together. Once again, we have our subject matter expert, Shor and Denny of Community Now. I am Glenn W. Hunter. And if you find what we've said to be thought-provoking, exciting, or you see ways that we can make a bigger difference through the work we're doing with Community Now, helping our youth manage trauma while giving them the tools to have a better foundation for social emotional learning. Shor, tell them how to get a hold of us.
You can reach Community Now at communitynow.info on the internet. You can email us at communitynow.info, and we can be reached at 951-413-6587 as a phone number.
Thank you for your time and attention. Be safe.
Be well.